What got me turned on to real estate was two things. One was when I learned that 90% of millionaires had gotten their millions through real estate. I thought those were really great odds. And if I wanted to have some kind of success, which translates into freedom, and just more of a comfortable lifestyle, then real estate is what would get me there.
Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today, after all the technical difficulties, I have the pleasure of having my man come into the lab. But before I give him an introduction, what I like is experimentation is about being a practitioner and taking action, taking the steps to get there. And then when I look at this gentleman's trajectory and portfolio and just his journey, I see that process behind the scenes. And another host of another podcast, of course. So we want to make sure that we give this gentleman the intro that he deserves. But just a little bit of background. He is the founder of Red Sea Capital, also has a host of the popular podcast From Trial to Triumph. And I appreciate that because once you're able to have a proof of concept in the lab, you're able to then continue to learn by either podcasting or either sharing your word with others. But what's even more impressive is the portfolio that I'm looking at that is across the nation. And I can see there is a little bit of similarity in the ways that you've been able to double down in your multifamily apartment portfolio. But at the same time, what stands out with this gentleman is how soon he started. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Caleb Johnson to the lab. Caleb, how's it going, my man? And where are you dialing in from? Most importantly, for those who are listening.
Yeah, Ruben, thank you so much for having me, man. You're awesome. I'm dialing in from Phoenix, Arizona.
Arizona. That's what's up, man. I was just in Arizona in I think February, around that time.
That's a great time to go.
Exactly. It was a bachelor party. But at the same time, we come from the world of short-term rentals. And so there's a lot of individuals who are in that space who speak highly of that market. But you come from a little bit of a different kind of niche, which is the niche we originally started with when we started to have a lot of guests here in the lab. Tell us a little bit about, when I meet you, if I come across and I shake your hand, I get a chance to greet you. What's your introduction that you'd say, you do? What do you specialize in? What do you do for a living, man? What do you say?
I'm actually trying to dial in something that I can actually say, because whenever you say real estate investor, people think you're an agent. And so what I tell people now is I buy distressed apartment buildings and I partner with investors so that we can buy those. And then we usually sell those within 5 years.
That's a great elevator pitch. It's so funny you say that because I would want to dissociate myself from real estate agents, from real estate investors, not in a mean, bad way, because you guys know I'm licensed as well. But I do think there are two very, very different avatars on how they look at real estate, and not in not in a negative way. Just brokers, we need them. Agents, we need them, and some of them play on both sides, like myself. However, you're playing a very different game where you've mastered a craft, whether it's the ability to analyze pull money together, and now you're saying, hey, you can do this with me. So let me ask you, speaking of craft, you started very young. So my question to you is, what pillars do you think are required for you to be able to do this? And which one do you think is your secret sauce that you've been able to hone over time, or at least that you like doing that gets you out of bed?
Yeah. So what got me turned on to real estate was two things. One was when I learned that 90% of millionaires had gotten their millions through real estate. I thought those were really great odds. And if I wanted to have some kind of success, which translates into freedom, and just more of a comfortable lifestyle, then real estate is what would get me there. And then also a pillar for me was when I was first starting off and trying to find out what I wanted to do in the world after high school. my mom went through a surgery, and long story short, she was given the option to stay home for 3 months and recover. At the end of 3 months, she wasn't healed all the way. So she could either go back to work, and being around retirement age, she could go back to work and make some money, bring some money in, but she'd be putting herself through a lot of physical pain to do that. And or she could stay home, rest and recover, but she would probably prolong retiring by years, 3 to 5 years. So she decided to go back to work, go through that pain. And Ruben, I would see her come home in tears because she was under so much stress to continue going to work, but having all this physical pain of standing for 8 hours a day was really burdensome to her. And so that broke my heart, coming home and seeing my mom cry because of the predicament that she was in. And so that motivated me to want to help her financially and retire early. And at the same time, I saw what having a job was and what that would do for me, or what it could do for me. And I'm not bashing jobs at all. I think we need certain jobs. And if people want to work, then praise God, that's great. I'm more of the ilk of I want more control. And I see that I get that from entrepreneurship and owning my own business. So that's why I started investing when I did.
So give me, I appreciate you giving that context, because I always say that usually there's always that tipping point, right? That happens, and usually, and unfortunately, usually it's associated with trauma or some kind of, all right, man, enough is enough. And it sounds like I could see where that stemmed from in your situation. We appreciate you sharing that. But so how old were you when when you made that decision that you're like, okay, like I'm gonna take matter in my own hands, and then I would like to know what that looked like tactically.
Yeah, I think I was 18 years old, and I got started with multi-level marketing. So the company I worked with was Amway. So they were established for about 75 years. And the idea is you own your own business, you have a product line, and you can bring people in so that they can own their own business, buy your products, and they can sell their products. And so you kind of build a downline, and then they're making money. And so you're making money. And so there's this compounding effect.
Mhm.
I did that for a year, and some things came up where I decided to not pursue that anymore after a year. Saw some success there, but after I had left that, decided to go real estate full time after that motivating moment for me. And so the structure was going to free resources like Bigger Pockets, YouTube videos, learning and self-educating. And then after I had felt like I knew enough, I knew I needed to find a mentor. And so for me, that's when things really started to heat up for me.
Wait, can you talk about that? Because I think a lot of people, there's two types of people. There's people who, very similar to you and I, understand that concept of like mentorship, paying for access, etc. What did that mentorship look like? Because I think there's a lot of coaching that is going on right now, and there's nothing wrong with it, by the way. Like when I say that, because I know some people feel some type of way. Like I invest a lot of money into education. I'm not talking about traditional education. I'm talking about like getting access, mastermind groups,
Hmm.
etc. Right? And there's the other side that's like, well, no, there's tons of free information out there, and or maybe like work for free under somebody else's watch you trade places with, etc. What did that look like for you in your world as far as being young? Not again, doesn't sound like you had money just pouring out of your pockets, right? So what did that look like? And I'm saying that, I'm asking so that someone who's in a position similar, maybe could be a little older, could be younger, it doesn't matter what age you are, but they hear it. What does it look like? What does mentorship look like? What does it look like to reach out to a mentor? What does it look like to pay for a mentor? Which one was it? How did you go about it?
Yeah, Ruben, I love that question. And I've actually done both. So I've paid tens of thousands of dollars once I had the capital to do that, so that I could have access to masterminds and year-long education courses that I could really hone in and dial in on my skills and what I needed to grow in. But starting off 19, 20 years old, man, I had no money. I think I probably had 20 grand total. And my plan was to house hack and use that capital to buy that first property. So the way I found my first mentor was he was more of a friend. I mean, he's turned into a friend, especially now, but he came into my place of business back then. And I knew he was an agent, but he also had about 5 rentals under his belt. And that's one thing that I always tell people is to find someone that's just 6 to 12 months, maybe 18 months ahead of where you are, because then they can teach you those really urgent and important things. That's the next step for your growth. Because I think people can just starting off and they want to be under Grant Cardone or somebody like that. And I think you can still learn. If you spend an hour in a room with Grant Cardone, you would learn some incredible things. And at the same time, finding someone that is just a little bit ahead of you is going to get you a lot further and probably save you a lot more money than going to that top dog in whatever industry you're in. So for me, what I did was found him. He had 5 rentals, and I called him up eventually and I said, "Hey, Gilbert, you come into this restaurant where I work at, and I know you invest in real estate. I want to do that. And I'm willing to work for you for free if you just teach me what you know." And I said, literally, I said, "I don't care what it takes. I'll unclog toilets at 2 a.m. I just need to learn. And I know this is the next step for me." And so he kind of chuckled at that and said, "Okay, read Rich Dad Poor Dad 5 times and call me back." So I did that. And then I called him back. And so we kind of did that dog and pony show with another book. I read that 6 times, and then a YouTube video. He said, "Okay, watch this 2 times and then call me back." So he was just vetting me out. But for me, that was my first mentor. And I'll tell you what, that saved me so much money just through the contacts he shared with me, the information. And also, it's really beneficial for me to actually see someone have success in that business, right? Because you can see these people on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and they're influencers, and you think, man, is that guy real? Like like it's hard for me to grasp that. But seeing him in the flesh was really inspiring for me to get started.
I love that you reached out, by the way, and like it's crazy because it's the proof is in the pudding. It's the same concept every time. One of the questions that I want to lead with and piggyback on that is, why do you think he asked you to read it multiple times? I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And he told me this, by the way, but his reason was he gets 10 calls like that. He gets so many people like my phone call all the time. And so he's vetting me out and saying, "Okay, is Caleb really serious? And if he is, he's willing to read this very important book that's going to be beneficial to him anyway. He's going to be willing to read that 6 times, no problem. And then if he's serious, he'll call me back."
Interesting. One thing that stands out on that is that I've been really diving deep into is the repetition as well, which is kind of ironic too, because I think it's a lot of us are educated, but not many of us are kind of master the craft and make it part of what I would call our subconscious mind, right? In order for you to integrate and have a real paradigm shift is to be able to really truly understand the content and start applying it. And I think a lot of us are in consumption mode and not application mode, which is what the lab is about. So it's interesting because repetition is actually the thing that happens when you read something over and then you make it become part of you. So I feel like there's synergy there, but it's what I'm hearing, and I don't know if Caleb you would agree, is there's 2 options, right? If you have the time, offer your time. And also, I think when you offer your time, that shows your dedication, because our time is valuable. Doesn't matter if you don't have money or not. It's part of your life. We all have 24 hours in a day. So when you give up your time, you're letting the other person know that you value this is important to you. And I think that's very important because we often kind of overlook that one. And then when you pay and you have the means of capital, it's hard-earned money and that you pay, and there's a price for it. And I like that one as well, because then you get access to these communities, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, when you did the homework, you passed the test. What do you think are some, in retrospect, what were some paradigm shifts that you think happened based on what you had learned and then was applied? Maybe some things were kind of reaffirm or confirmations of truths that you had gathered, but then I would also love to hear what is no longer true in your now new set of lens that you have. So if you want to talk about like what shift that you have, paradigm shift, confirmations perhaps, and then I would love to also hear maybe some things that you feel are either still consistent or have changed now that you're in this position.
I think to answer your first question, maybe not so much a paradigm shift, but what did happen is I was taking action, right? I think so many times I talk to investors all the time and they say, and they tell me this, which is kind of funny.
Paralysis.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. And so that is interesting. And so, but they know they're in that. And I've been there too. But there gets to a point where you just need to take action. And so when I actually called him up, I didn't say this earlier, but I had his business card for 2 months and I was still self-educating myself for that 2 months. And I thought, dude, I've had this card for 2 months. Just call him up, Caleb. And I did. And so taking action was kind of like you said, that paradigm shift to say, okay, Caleb, you're serious. And I'm talking to myself now mentally, you're doing it. And so you're taking that next step. And if, let's say, Gilbert never picked up the phone, then okay, praise God. You at least did what you could do. And so now that door is closed off and go find somebody else. And what was can you clarify your second question?
Yeah, the second question might be like, I think we evolve, right? So that was like it's kind of the initial phase. And now that you're here, are there some truths that you find are still consistent, or do you feel like over time some things have changed that are like, what, Ruben, I thought this was once true when I started, but now I see things a little bit differently now that I'm in this position, right? You have, you got over 450 units.
Yeah, well, technically I'd say 117. That there's a development that I'm no longer a part of. And so, but yeah, so 6 assets, 117 units across 3 states. But that is a
first
really
of all, love the correction and transparency, because a lot of people would just ride with that, right? Like, yeah, sure, he said it, I didn't. So thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, it's actually 800 units, by the way. 800. No, I'm kidding.
Listen, correct me. Whatever the number is, I believe that whether it's now or in the future, you're gonna get there. And what I'm trying to show is that there's been a transformation, which is obviously you started with 0 and now you're at, call it, even if it was 50 or 100, you're 100 plus, right? And so I wonder, when you go through that transformation or compound effect, for lack of better words, are the principles still the same, or do you actually see that actually, I thought it was hard to raise capital, but I realized this, or I once thought it was this, or I once thought this was the case, but now this is my new truth now that I'm here in this position. I think that's what I'm trying to get at, that new transition into the new Caleb.
I'm with you. So when I first started, I wanted to focus on residential real estate, so 1 to 4 units. And then I thought I would start there, learn that business for 5 to 10 years, and then scale into larger properties, just because I knew there was more meat on the bone, more opportunities once you got playing around with bigger units. And so 3 years into my journey, I got around some apartment guys, and they really showed me 2 things that changed my life. The first was this gentleman who was at this real estate meetup who was sharing his story. He talked about his first apartment acquisition. So he bought this property, they owned it for 4.5 years, and it was a partnership. And then they sold it and he alone in the partnership, not the whole partnership, but he alone made $2.5 million after 4.5 years. And I thought, there's no way I can do that in residential real estate. And so the second thing was that, whenever you start investing in commercial, you're going to be green regardless of when you start. You could have 5 years of commercial or 5 years of residential experience or 15. Commercial and residential are two completely different animals. And so you could start day one in commercial real estate and you're still going to be just around the same point as, someone who's been investing in residential for 3 years. And so start sooner rather than later. And that was kind of that shift in my mind that I've really adopted now.
I love that. I really like the perspective of like, you're going to be green, you're going to be new in this new vertical, in this new avenue, no matter how much previous experience that you have, which I think is what, honestly, that's where the opportunity is. Cause I think that's where the discomfort is. No one wants to be seen, not even be seen, but it's uncomfortable to start and be brand new. Like I think that's really the big thing where people are like, well, I'll stick to what I know and what I'm used to. I'm curious for you though. Do you think it's why do we, let me ask you, why do we go to residential? Is it just because it's what we know? Like, what do you think? I mean, looking at, why did you think that was the path? Like, and the reason I say that actually is because your mentor was in apartments, right?
My first one was he owned about 5 single family residents.
Oh, interesting. So I'm almost wondering, kind of feeding my point. Almost wondering if we, like, let's just say like we're just born into apartments and that's all we saw. And we're like, oh yeah, let's get into investing. And that's what we knew. I'm wondering, is it more of, do we think do we want to just start at 1 + 1 = 2? And we don't just think of going to 10? Like, I'm just curious. Like, what do you think? I have you here. So I'm asking you.
No, that's a great question. And I haven't really thought about it. I do think there is some of that where, okay, start with 1, get your feet wet, and then scale from there. And then you have 4. I think Brandon Turner on the Bigger Pockets podcast talked about that. You buy 1 year, the next year you buy a duplex, the next year 4, and then 8, and then 16, and then you just increasing over there. And so I think there's part of that. And at the same time, I wonder, and I'm just talking out loud, so this could be valid or completely not valid. I wonder if there's a point where it's just belief in ourselves, or we have some kind of self-confidence that we need to work on and improve on. Because I have talked to people where, day one, they're starting in apartments. They have never done residential real estate. And they just start investing in apartments. Maybe after doing like 6 months of research in different asset classes, they just pick commercial, and that's where they decide to go.
That's so interesting. Like, I'm curious, Caleb, while you're on that thought, I would love to ask them, and I know we don't have them here, and maybe you have some insight, but what made them think to start at apartments?
Right. Yeah, that's one thing I don't know. I know for me, I think there was part of that, right? I did want to start in residential real estate. And I knew for me starting off, I'm 19 years old. And this is an excuse I'm telling myself, right? So
limiting belief, right?
Yeah, I'm 19 years old. Who's going to want to raise capital, or who's going to want to give me their capital to buy apartments? I don't know how to do that. And so I'm just going to start with a 4-plex. And it was, a valid point, being 19 years old. And I had the great opportunity to buy this 4-plex, live in 1 unit. And I bought it for like 12 grand, and then sold it and made over 150. And so it was still a great investment, praise God. But still, I think there's maybe something in our brains, we tell ourselves excuses, but there's definitely something there.
Experiment Nation, you've heard the word MTR, midterm rentals.
as it is currently a hot topic and hot commodity right now, because again, there has been an increase in short-term rental regulations, and there also has been, let's face it, a slowdown in what we were experiencing a couple years back when it comes to bookings. So with that said, short-term rental operators are looking for alternative solutions to tap into the midterm rental space. However, there is a space, there is a sub niche of midterm rental insurance that I'm truly excited about, that I want to share with you, that the experience that we've had, the tremendous results we've been able to have, and that's the insurance midterm rental space, which is very different than your traditional midterm rentals. When you think of traditionally midterm rentals, you think of travel nurses. There is a space, midterm rental insurance space, that we've tapped in, where you need to be well connected with insurance and relocation specialists and companies, and understand the right type of asset required for you to be able to help these families. What's really important, that stands out the most, which you can get in what I'm about to offer you, is the understanding where to be found by these insurance companies, how to properly manage your calendar so that your listings are optimized so that they can find you, how to actually gain traction and build a relationship with these relocation insurance companies. I've put together an MTR insurance blueprint, that's MMTRRR insurance blueprint, to cover these foundations after we've had success landing very large contracts on single family homes that literally 4x what we traditionally make in long-term rentals, and also gives us peace of mind because there's less turnover and 100% occupancy, because these contracts can start anywhere from 30 days to 3 months to 8 months, and range anywhere from, again, we've landed anywhere from $8,000 to $9,000 a month in per month on a single family home property, which our mortgages are typically around the 2,400 range, which then gives you a large spread of anywhere from 4 to 6K net on just one property. And this is why it's very hot right now. But people who haven't been in the lab with individuals like myself, like Jesse Vasquez and Dr. Rachel Gainsborough and Noble Crawford, don't have the foundations and don't know exactly where to start. And therefore, this is why I'm giving you guys a blueprint, the MTRR insurance blueprint. Go to the website, experimentrealestate.com, and get yourself a blueprint to completely change, or at least have a plan B if you're a short-term rental operator looking to maximize your occupancy and profitability. We'll see you on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, like, I've been, and again, you probably know where I'm like, damn, he keeps on asking all these deep questions. It's just because I'm on this journey right now. I'm just trying to, like, rewire the way that I think, and I'm sharing that with Experiment Nation. So that's where my questions are coming from. I'm just a curious person, and I start questioning a lot of, like, hey, why do we think that way? Like, why do we think this is right? Like, why do we think, and I'm in the midterm rental space, right? Like, we deal with insurance companies, and we, like, charge a premium. Like, the numbers that we make is not, like, traditional at all. Like, people are still blown, like, what? On a single family? Yeah. Like, you can land these large contracts and make 5x what you would get on traditional. But I had to go into a circle where that's how people thought. Like, I had to pay to get access, I had to get this information. I didn't think this way. And by the way, like, I was never, when I think about it too, is I was never an entrepreneur minded. Like, I kind of followed that path, and then I never sold lemonade on a lemonade stand, right? Like that. Like, some people just have that sometimes. Me, I kind of just kind of had to rebrand myself and I think that comes from curiosity. So I always like to ask, when there's someone on the other side of the mic that's, playing in a different space and doing very respectable leaps, and taking those respectable leaps. I was like, hey, what was your mindset like, and what were you thinking, and what are you thinking now, right? So
yeah,
appreciate you guys coming down that path with me, man. But that's where that's coming from. I want to give you a little bit of context.
Yeah, I love that. And I do think we need to be curious, right? Asking questions. And so I think there's a maturity in that, because some people are afraid to ask questions. But that one person in class, in that room of 30, who asks the one question everyone's thinking. And so, yeah, just be yourself. I love it.
Yeah. So tell me, as far, you started with the single family mentor, right?
the guy who picked up the card, is that was the single family mentor? Okay,
That's
great.
right.
How do you cross over to that path of okay, it's time to go multifamily now? What was that? Because when I think of Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's single family driven, right? Oh, actually, no, he has apartments too, right? I guess he has a little bit of, but I haven't read it. It's been a while since I've picked up the book. But like, I know he talks about the cash flow. There's the cash flow quadrants. There's a lot, but I know a lot of people read, the book and don't necessarily go to apartments first. So for you, what was that transition? And the reason I'm asking too, I think I appreciate you sharing the quad story, but I also want to hear how quickly or I shouldn't say quickly because that prefaces that it happened quick, and that might not have been the case, but how was that timing between trying to help mom out? How long did that take, that transition?
Until helping her out.
Yeah, you were able to actually help, because I think people want to hear like the process, and it's like also, well, yeah, but like, when do you start making money, right? Like, let's talk about the process, and then like, when do you actually have cash in hand? Are you equity rich? Are you cash rich? Let's talk about that, because I think that's important. Where someone who's trying to like, do I get to quit my 9 to 5 yet? Right?
Yeah.
I want to
I
give
love that. I love it, man. Getting right.
context.
Yeah. Right to the dirt. And it's not a lot of people are talking about it. And this is one thing I'm very passionate to share where I'm at, and complete honesty. So I was in residential for 3 years. And then for the past 3 years, I focused on apartments. Now I've closed 6 deals. Well, one I'm a silent investor on technically. So let's say 5 syndications. And they're ranging from 16 units, a 20, a 20, a 30, and a 30. And so I have, starting out, right, let's say you're green, I found the deals and I didn't bring all that much capital. So I had a very small percentage of the total ownership, probably 3%. It ranges from 3% most of the time, and then 14% for a 16 unit that I own. And so when you start, man, you're living off of acquisition fees. And to give some color on what that is,
get some color.
yeah. So an acquisition fee, let's say you buy a $10 million property, and your acquisition fee is a fee that goes to the sponsors. That's usually 1 to 5%, depending on the size of the deal. And just once you close, you get that. So $10 million, 1%, I think that's $100,000 if I'm doing that math right.
Yeah, I got you. Experimentation, I got it. 100,000.
There you go.
Right.
And so,
but that's 10 million. So what do we like? Is that? I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. I will say that it is a big deal. There are people that are doing $100 million deals as well, or they're doing, I'd had a conversation with a broker yesterday, and she says, what unit size, what's your buy box? How much can you do? And I said, probably under 75 million, because we're syndicators. We can partner with a lot of people. And she said, okay, well, I have a deal in Phoenix that is over that, but I know someone in Austin who has a deal. And so I'm saying 75 million to be on the high end. And so she also has another deal that's higher than that. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that at all to be braggadocious and say I can do this big deal. It's a partnership game. And so it's not Caleb just doing this, it's a lot of partners.
Relationship. By the way, you don't even have to say that here. Experiment Nation knows we're fully tapped in. So it's a safe space. And this is why when I get into the numbers, because someone's listening, and again, we're talking to for lack of a better words, the winners and action takers. Like, I'm not tripping about someone who's like, oh yeah, well, what about this? No. We're here to inspire and to educate. And so if I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I'm making 100K in my job right now, and I like this Caleb guy, I vibe with him, love how he keeps saying praise to God, energy, I could tell he's good, he's in alignment, I like his voice. If I'm planning to save my mother, retire her, / start a family, perhaps, whatever my endeavors are, and I want to lean on this apartment thing, and I'm a planner. What is the timeline? Is it going to be on my first deal? Do I really get to eat from that? Or am I a GP? Am I an LP? Okay, let's say I'm a GP and I'm adding value in this sense. Like, okay, so I get 3%, and in my marketplace, it's a $5 million deals. Okay, that's about 50K. So I'm maybe not able to quit my job just yet, but that next deal I might like. I'm trying to give somebody who's listening some kind of level of context of like, okay, I understand that there's tons of value to be added, and this might be an avenue that I can go down. How much money does it really make, and how do I scale up like Caleb did, and where Caleb is going, right? Because this isn't my field, right? And I can't speak, and this is why you're here, and this is why I love that you're here. You can give that context, because you're like, hey, it might take you 3 years to ramp up. It might take you land your first home run, a 75 million, and you're able to just connect all the dots and get a piece of that action. So I wanted to, I think we're there already. So, but I wanted to give a little context of who we're really speaking to, because we're speaking for the go-getters.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So probably it took me, let's say, a year after dedicating to apartments to learn the business.
Yeah.
And it took me a year to learn. And then in the last 2 years, let's say I've probably made 40 grand on acquisition fees, and in complete honesty. And so it's not a lot of money, right? Now I focus on smaller deals. Those are 16 units to 30 units. And I haven't.
And in your market, you're buying for those around what price point?
Around 50. So 50,000 a door, for the most part. 50, we have a couple $70,000 per unit in New Mexico, 150 per unit, and then 90 per unit in Tucson. So they're ranging purchase price from $1 million to $5 million.
Yep.
And so I'm a smaller minority owner. I haven't brought a whole lot of capital. All I've done is find the deal. So to those people that are needing more capital, I'd say go big, go bigger. That's what I'm starting to do, because there's not those people too that you want to partner with, those guys that are worth $15 million, because you need someone with the net worth of the loan amount to even buy this deal. So if you want a $10 million deal, you need someone with a net worth of $10 million to sign the note. They also need 10% liquidity to buy that. So they need $1 million in the bank, stocks or something liquid. So those guys are really the guys that are making money, but they aren't going to sign on a 50 unit. I mean, some will, but the effort and the time invested on their part needs to be worth it. So you need to make sure there's enough meat on the bone for everybody, which is great for you, because that means you're going to get a slice of that action, right? So focus on bigger deals. We're looking at 75 plus units. And after a year, let's say you buy an apartment, you're on the GP. So you're on the ownership. Well, everyone's an owner, but you're on the main operator side. So we call that the general partners, the team of guys that are putting this deal together, and they're managing it, asset manage it. So it takes about 6 months to a year to stabilize the property, not all properties, but the properties we're looking at, value add apartments. They might be cash flowing day one. That's best case scenario. But usually 6 months to 12 months is once you start seeing cash flow. And there's other fees too that you're getting from that. So it might be, let's say, for all the deals I own, $500 to $1,000 a month. Once everything's stabilized and running smoothly, that's what I'll be making until we sell that in about 5 years. So Ruben, I know I just said a lot of information. It might have gone over some people's heads, but I'm happy to break that down if you want.
Yeah, no, let's break it down, because I want you to actually just bring that point home for a second for the people in the back who aren't paying attention, because I heard you. I like how you said go big, but what I also want to highlight, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is it the same amount to effort to go big?
It is. In context, right? So I'm doing a 30 unit. We bought a 30 unit last year in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we're currently working on another property that's 84 units in a different market. And it is going to be the same amount of work. It might actually be easier because once, this is something I found, from that 10 unit, probably to like 70, 75 unit mark, finding a quality property manager that focuses on that size property is really challenging to find. Now, there might be some people listening to this and they found them, or they are that special property manager that does that. And that's awesome. It's been very challenging for us in our experience to find someone that's qualified and they really specialize in that. So it's actually easier once you get to that 100 unit mark or bigger. The acquisition fees are bigger. All the money that you can make is a lot bigger. There's a lot more meat on the bone for everybody. And also, it operates more like a business because you have 100 units, let's say under 15 roofs, instead of one unit under one roof. You have on-site property management and an on-site maintenance guy who lives there sometimes. And so it just runs like a business, a lot smoother.
What's the challenge that you're finding? Is it for the 80 units or less, or 75 or less? Is it because that you don't have someone that you can afford on payroll? Is it a quality issue? Is it you don't have enough overhead or enough capital to pay for someone? Like what is the issue here? So we're very clear.
I think some of it can be, a lot of people, they're single family property managers and that's all they do. And so that's great if you're that person. Now there's also the bigger players that will only manage 100 units and larger. That's just what they focus on, and they're really good at that. But there's not a lot of people that focus on that middle unit range. You might get some people that are only 100 unit guys, and they might take on your 50 unit deal because they know, like, and trust you, but they only do 100 unit plus. And so your deal is likely going to suffer because they aren't really that type of guy. And then you have the single family property manager who says, yeah, I'll take on a 50 unit apartment. No problem. I can do that. I've done 50 single family deals. I can do one apartment. That's going to make my life even easier. But it runs completely differently. And so I think that's just a big need in the market, is someone that can do that well. And at the same time, Ruben, there's no one who's on site. You just really, I think someone that has the systems and processes in place that can manage a property like that, it's great. But there's just not a lot of people that focus on that middle road.
When you say they're not on site, are you saying that you can't afford to have them be on site?
A lot of these deals, you can afford that, but
you can't or can?
Can, C-A-N, you can
Okay.
afford it. Like right now, I'm looking at a 60 unit apartment and there's no office. So what we need to do maybe is use a storage unit and convert that into an office, or convert one of the units into an office. And so, but that cuts into vacancy. And so, but then the property can only afford someone for part-time. So then you need another property that equals that 100 unit mark. So you can kind of combine. So it usually gets pretty expensive and you're only paying for, you're just not getting the best bang for your buck, if that makes sense.
What's the typical, when you're looking at 100 unit plus, what would you pay that? Are we still talking about 8%? Are we talking about like a fixed salary of $60,000? Like, what is it how is it structured? And because I know you talked about renting it like a business. So which one is it?
That's a great question, because I see a lot of newbies, they get into apartments and they have 8% property management fee on their mind, and that's it. But it's completely different in apartments. So let's say a 100 unit apartment, you're going to pay a 3% property management fee that goes to the property management company, but you also have to pay payroll. And depending on your market, if you're in Oklahoma, you're going to be at $11.50 per unit. But if you're in Texas or Arizona and Phoenix, you're probably going to pay $13.50 per unit.
What is that? 13, or what are you talking about? Are we talking thousands when you say 1150, 1350? What is that?
So 1150 is multiply $1,150 times the unit count. So if we're talking about a 100 unit apartment, if my math is right, that's going to be about $111,000. just in
So
payroll
that's a year, right?
every year. That's right. And then plus the management fee.
Huh. It's very interesting math.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just looking at 1 unit. If I were to divide that by 12, I'm looking at about $95 a month per unit.
Mm-hmm. And once,
And I know you're looking at it like a P&L, so you're thinking annually, but I was just trying to put it into context when I think of some of the monthly P&Ls that we look at on our end. Just thinking
right.
out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. $95 a pop a month adds up to about $11.50 for 1 unit.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Some
And then you
interesting.
have 100 units, or if you have 500 units, then you still, sometimes you can get even better economies of scale once you
Mhm.
have more units. So maybe instead of 1150, you're at 1100 or 1050. And so, but that's something your property manager is going to know.
This is interesting. I always think there's like always opportunities, and this is why I like to get into business, because you see there's other opportunities within the opportunities. But what an interesting opportunity and challenge that this brings. But at the same time, it gives you the perspective as to why you want to play in this pool versus the other.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So let's talk about the the name of your firm is Red Sea Capital. The word in there is capital, and I think what do you think is the I think the biggest hurdle that people have when it comes to been in single family, crushed it, or brand new in single family and I want to go to apartments? It doesn't matter what level you are at. You said it. When you go to the other side, what is the biggest obstacle? Is it capital? Is it deal analyzing? Is it underwriting? Is it getting the I guess capital funding? Same thing. What is the biggest hurdle that you've seen, you've heard, you're in these mastermind groups, you've
Mm-hmm.
been through it yourself? What is it that you hear, and how can we unpack that for our listeners so maybe we can get an insight as to how you can overcome it?
Yeah. I think two things come to mind. And one is starting off, right? You don't know what you don't know. So listen to, if you're just starting off, you're green, listen to podcasts, watch YouTube videos, contact me. I have some resources for people if they want to start investing in apartments that can help them get ahead a little bit. And so start listening to free podcasts, but you can either go that free mentor route and provide value, or you can go and pay 50 grand, 10 grand, whatever that is, to a mastermind. And sometimes it's $200 a month or whatever that is. So that's where I would say people like starting off, that's one big obstacle to overcome, just finding out how to start. And the other thing you talked about, capital, you hear, is it capital or the deal? What's harder to find? And I would actually say it's cyclical. Like right now, we're starting to get into this phase where I'm already seeing deals, a lot more deals happening. Like we've seen in apartments a 75% decline in transaction volume compared to 2022 in 2023. So 75% less deals happening in 2023 than 2022. And so there's a shortage of deals, but usually when that happens, there's a lot of money available. And so like last year, we were seeing a ton of investors wanting to invest their money, but no deals were penciling because people were paying crazy amounts of money. And just for us, the numbers didn't work. And so I can raise a lot more money, but there's no deal. And now on the flip side, it's cyclical. There's going to be a lot of deals happening, I think, especially in the next 6 months, but everyone's scared and they want to hold on to the money because they don't know what the market is going to do. So it's pretty cyclical, if that answers your question.
Okay. And so you would say that those are actually the two challenges that then one faces going on to the other side, or is there another one that is a actual I don't know if I would say catalyst, but
No, I'm with you. Yeah, I think I mean, the deal or in the money. I mean, if you have those two things, the management is another huge piece of it. So if you're going into a new market, then really having a good property manager in your back pocket. And I tell this to a lot of people is that don't go into a tertiary market, tertiary meaning very small, let's say a population of 10,000 people. Don't
Mhm.
go into that market and have one property manager or two, let's say, and think and and I say I wouldn't do that because if one property manager fails, then you have the next one. But what if they fail? Now, if I go into Dallas, Fort Worth, or Phoenix, I mean, there are dozens of property
Or
management
more.
companies, yeah, or more. And so you
Mhm.
have some flexibility there. So the property manager will really make or break your deal. And so making sure
Mm.
they have experience and you have a couple of resources in your back pocket if one doesn't come through, that's also really key.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that what um your debt or your lender is going to look at as well, who's operating the deal, who's managing it? Like, how much does that come into play? Is it more of having that strong sponsor or that partner that
Mhm.
has the liquidity, or is it a combination of also having a strong operator in place, especially if you're new? Does that even factor in anymore? Or is that still a thing? Or
Yeah, I think the lender will still want to know the property manager, and in the sense of you'll just send them the property manager agreement, and there's a lot more in-depth research that goes into the sponsor, so the person
Mhm.
that's getting the loan compared to the person that's actually the property manager. And
Okay.
so yeah, finding those things are pretty key.
So a self-managed still, does that still fly when we're playing in that space of under 80 units? Like, is that a big question mark? Or like, what do you mean you're gonna self-manage this? Like, does that come up, or is it not even best? Like, where does that sit in the conversation?
Hmm. You know, I'm not a lender, so I wouldn't have the best answer for that, but I will tell you that I see a lot of people that they buy, let's say, a 50 unit apartment but they're out of state. And so sometimes they will self-manage it, but
Mhm.
that's very rare if they're actually going to be at the property and do the whole song and dance and manage the property. I will say I met someone, David Tupin.
Mhm.
He's a big tech guy in
Uh,
multifamily, but he actually house hacked a 96 unit apartment where he was living in one unit. And it was kind of an interesting story that he shared on one of our shows. Um, but for the most part, yeah, someone's going to hire third party property management.
okay. So tell me, Caleb, what is the temperature right now? Obviously, you talked about the elephant in the room that everyone, I don't know if it applies to you or not, but obviously you mentioned that it's hard, right? You're looking at these deals and it's like they're not deals, and we're not gonna overpay just to say we're investing in real estate every year, every quarter. So then what does that look like internally, right? Um, I can speak for ourselves, but what does it look like on your end? What is the day to day then? If we're not planning, are we still taking people out and forming relationships? What is happening under the hood when we talk about a market that's tightening a little bit in these conditions?
Hmm. You know, we're always building relationships with people. And so I think when there's more deals, you want to understand how to underwrite to begin with. So if you're fresh in the market, partner with someone that
Hmm.
knows underwriting. And so you can learn from them. Now, if you already know underwriting, and let's say it's a dead season, there's not a lot of deals happening, then start building relationships with lenders, other brokers, people that will invest in your deals, so partners. And so start building those relationships more and more. And then whenever it is a hot market where you can start underwriting, then you can switch into underwriting mode and you'll already have those relationships in place.
Love it.
Love it. That's what it's all about. Flex the muscle, rinse and repeat, right?
Mhm.
Um,
That's
what
right.
do you now that you're here and you kind of talk about that transition or that hunger to get to where you are today? What would you tell the younger version of Caleb? I don't know, it seems like you took the right steps, but there's definitely tons of lessons that I feel we're constantly learning. I feel like I could do this on a weekly basis, right? Just, man, I would have done this differently, not with regret, but with wisdom.
Mm,
What would you tell your younger self again today?
yeah. I it's not really a business. It relates to business, but it's more personal. And so, but it's very important. So when I was younger, I think I'm still learning this, but I can be somewhat of an isolationist. So I can isolate myself from people very easily. If someone doesn't do something that makes sense to me, or I can just cut someone out of my life very easily. And the deep seated root of that is ego. And honestly, it can be that sometimes I can think that I'm better than that other person, which is not the case at all. I can learn anything from anybody. I don't remember who said it, but they said, every man is my superior in some way. So if I knew that more going back, man, Ruben, I would have saved a lot of relationships, a lot of heartache, and would have had, I think, a much more fruitful life if I just didn't, if I had that mentality of I can learn from anyone and not just to cut people out and think I'm better than them.
Hmm, that's very refreshing. Appreciate you sharing that.
Mhm.
Um, but like I said, the lab is a safe space, and I gotta say, brother, you are early and you still got a lot of life in you yet. So when you say had, I think you change that into the present. You're gonna have a very fruitful life because of these
Mhm.
adjustments that you're making along the way. And we're all course correcting. That's why we're here in the lab, or else we
Yeah.
wouldn't be here in the lab. So I appreciate you sharing that though. And I think it's a good reflection point. I think when you talk about one of the things I want to share while we're on this topic is, when we talk about surrounding ourselves with, people we want to trade places with and mastermind groups and all that. One thing is to also keep in mind that, yeah, there is the opportunity to learn uh, from from everyone's perspective, because sometimes you're like, oh well, what do they know? But I think sometimes it's good to even have a fresh set of perspective. Now, I do say that with a caveat because I do believe that um, there's some people that you can go to for very specific things, right? And then some that are maybe not qualified, but it doesn't mean that if they're not qualified or not qualified in other areas. And I think that's the little asterisk next to that, right?
Mhm.
Because it's like, oh, you don't know, what do you know about apartments? Well, yeah, but okay, what about the other things? What about the other blind spots that you have? So I think that's a good reflection point. And here's where I'm going with this point that I want to put a bow on it is, for me personally, because you decided to open up and I really appreciate that, is just being able to, I think there's a lot of opportunities to take insights from a lot of other mediums, verticals. That's, I think I consume a lot of content on real estate. I go to a lot of conferences on real estate. I'm part of a lot of masterminds in real estate. But if you just, and this is a little challenge that I have for myself too, tap into a new vertical that's completely unrelated to that world and ecosystem. You get a new different perspective on things and a lot of other insights that you can then apply to your industry. And another one, this is for my capital raisers, this is what I always say: when you're in that real estate person in that room, you become then the key person of influence in that specific room, and that room can be influential. And when you're the real estate guy in one of those rooms, you're not one of many real estate guy, you become the real estate guy or gal.
Mm.
So that's another, I think there's a way for us to continue to experiment in our respective mediums. And I appreciate you putting a bow on that and sharing, making yourself vulnerable and sharing what's going on behind the man who founded Red Sea Capital Group. So tell me, where can we find out more about what you're doing? Obviously,
Caleb Johnson is the name and just a Google away, but how do you like to interact with people who want to engage with you and tap into some of the work that you're doing? You got your podcast, you got the company, get your own personal brand. Where can we tap in?
Yeah, they can visit us at redseacapitalgroup.com. And, check us out on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can check out our podcast at From Trial to Triumph. And so, Ruben, also, I appreciate you having me on, brother. I mean, it was very enjoyable to speak with you, and I love just talking shop like this. So it was very enjoyable.
Absolutely, man. And that's what you get when you come here in the lab, and we're all here to learn, educate, inspire. And I appreciate you for doing all of the above. And so we'll definitely make sure we tap in Red Sea Capital Group. You heard it here, Caleb Johnson. Just like that, we are out.
Experiment Nation, podcasting has changed the way we operate as real estate investors ourselves, and it can do the same for you. Podcasting has been the source of the masterclasses that we get thanks to the world-class real estate investors and practitioners and specialists that come into the lab from all realms, from short-term rentals to mid-term rentals to real estate syndications to even software as a service. Owners, founders, entrepreneurs have helped enrich our experiments by giving us the education, helping us build a network, and lastly, and most importantly, a brand association to open up multiple doors for our respective businesses. If you understand the power that podcasting can have and you know that you need one for your brand, please, you can rely on our team. InvestedTalent.com is my team and the team that helps this podcast, the Real Estate Experiment, become the fruition each and every single week to educate my community, build relationships on the air, and continue to build our brand. If you know that you need to do the same for your brand and you haven't pulled the trigger yet, maybe because you don't know how, our company, InvestedTalent.com, does the end-to-end from the time that you record, from the time that it is published, to even repurposing content on multiple social media platforms. That's what my team can do for you. Simply go to InvestedTalent.com and book a discovery call to see how my team can help you launch your podcast.